protecting those who protect us. I'm Kelly Meyer reporting from Washington. What steps the Pentagon is taking to keep servicemen and women safe from the coronavirus.
I'm Trevor Shirley in Washington, where the federal government is spending billions of dollars to keep airports afloat during the pandemic. Coming up, find out if your local airport is on the list.
A request for relief funding from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. I'm Basil John reporting in Washington why some lawmakers want this route available while others say we should wait.
More and more states are starting to ban abortions during the coronavirus crisis, but courts are starting to intervene. I'm Jessie Tenor in Washington, and I'll have that story coming up.
I'm instructing my administration to halt funding of the World Health Organization while a review is conducted to assess the World Health Organization's role in severely mismanaging and covering up the spread of the coronavirus. Everybody knows what's going on there. American taxpayers provide between $400 million and $500 million per year to the WHO. In contrast, China contributes roughly $40 million a year, and even less. As the organization's leading sponsor, the United States has a duty to insist on full accountability. One of the most dangerous and costly decisions from the WHO was its disastrous decision to oppose travel restrictions from China and other nations. They were very much opposed to what we did. Fortunately, I was not convinced and suspended travel from China, saving untold numbers of lives. Thousands and thousands of people would have died.
I want to share my framework for restarting public life and business in our state, how we're going to approach reopening Oregon.
You have a couple of bands of Democrat governors, but they will agree to it. They will agree to it. But the authority of the President of the United States having to do with the subject we're talking about is total.
So you see this contrast between, on the one hand, claiming absolute and unfettered authority, and on the other hand, saying it's not all my fault, it's other people's fault. It also stands in marked contrast to our system of separated powers, wherein power is always contested.
The President said last night that he has total authority for determining how and when states reopen. That is not an accurate statement. I mean, there are many things you can debate in the Constitution because they're ambiguous. This is not one of those things that is ambiguous. The President did a number of tweets this morning where he's clearly unhappy. Did a tweet about mutiny on the Bounty and governors are mutineers. I didn't follow the exact meaning of the tweet, but the basic essence of the tweet was that he was not happy with governors and that this was a mutiny. The President is clearly spoiling for a fight on this issue. If he wants a fight, he's not going to get it from me, period. This is going to take us working together.
We're winning our battle. We're winning our war. We're going to be announcing some very good things in the near future. The American public's been great, far greater than anybody would have thought. They had minimum numbers of 100,000, and I think we're going to beat that. 100,000 deaths, can you believe that? That was a minimum. And if we didn't practice what we practiced, and if we did it a different way, because we had a maximum of 2.2 million people, who knows even if that's right. But the way I look at it, if you cut it in half and cut it in half again, it's 500,000 or 600,000. That's what we lost in the Civil War. That's not acceptable. So we couldn't have done it, to bull through, as we call it, to bull through it, just like treat it like a flu. If we did that, so we made the right moves. Now we have to get our country open again. You all know that. And I'm going to be making a decision pretty quickly, and it's being done in conjunction with governors. We have tremendous support from governors, and what I do is going to be done in conjunction with governors, but we'll be doing that in a little while, especially in terms of the people. We have a lot of great people in this country that know the different fields, and we have a lot of skill is going to have to be used to get our country back to where it was, and we want to do it quickly.
But ultimately, the virus is going to determine when we really can safely reopen, not only in general, but in a particular location. So, you see those curves that are shown all the time at the press conference. New York goes way up. New Jersey is way up. Now we're starting to see Boston and DC doing that. Then there's a whole cluster of them on the bottom of communities, states, cities, where there's a degree of infection, but it hasn't done that exponential increase yet. I think how you reopen, if you want to use that word, the economy in those communities is going to depend a lot on the ability to contain what we know will happen. I'll guarantee you, once you start pulling back, there will be infections. It's how you deal with the infection that's going to count. I think if we are assuming that 2 weeks from now, that all the curves are going to be down, I think that's a bit overly optimistic. And then come September, October, November, we have another peak. I have to say, I would not be surprised. I would hope that if and when that occurs, that we jump all over it in a much, much more effective way than we have in these past few months. Being there to be able to answer the questions of the media, I think is really important, because we're going through a real public health crisis in our country. And I always feel that the media, who I have a great deal of respect for, is really important to be able to answer their reasonable questions, and they are all reasonable questions. The downtime that we have there is really draining. If I had been able to just make a few comments and then go to work, that would have really been much better. It's the downtime. It isn't the idea of being there and answering questions, which I really think is important. Right now, in a very important process of trying to develop a vaccine, of trying to get monoclonal antibodies. And I go in every morning and I meet with my team at NIAID. But a lot of times they need me for decisions. I make myself pretty available, but that gets you to like literally a 19-hour day, which after a while, it's not easy.
Planes on the tarmac at Chicago's O'Hare International Airport sit idle. Check-in counters and concourses across the country are ghost towns.
With that kind of traffic drop, revenue cannot be collected to keep those airports viable.
FAA Deputy Administrator Dan Elwell says with air travel down 90%, more than 3,000 U.S. airports will soon get emergency federal money.
This is a financial bridge to keep these airports viable.
In total, $10 billion allotted through the CARES Act will let airports large and small keep their doors open and employees and vendors paid.
We have used a formula to ensure that we get this money as quickly as possible to every airport that needs it.
Typically, aviation grant money comes with strict rules about how it can be used, but not this time.
So those restrictions are lifted so airports can use this money for purposes they would not normally use federal airport funds for.
The grants include tens of millions of dollars for airports in Indianapolis, Tampa, and Chicago, plus hundreds of millions more for smaller regional airports across all 50 states.
But it's just as important to the rural communities that are going to receive this aid as it is for the hotspots.
The FAA says airports can also use the money to pay down debt. Reporting in Washington, I'm Trevor Shirley.
Our condolences go out to his family.
Joint Chiefs Chairman General Mark Milley on the coronavirus death of a sailor from the USS Theodore Roosevelt on which nearly 600 sailors have tested positive for the virus. General Milley says the DoD is working much like the rest of America to ramp up coronavirus testing.
Especially for groups that are going to be probably be in tighter quarters.
The increased testing is just part of the Pentagon's efforts to protect servicemen and women. Defense Secretary Mark Esper says he's sent out 8 directives since January, from requiring social distancing to a travel ban to and from some U.S. bases.
This is a necessary measure to keep our people safe and our military ready to act.
The DoD hopes to increase the amount of testing in the next 45 days.
Testing.
Democrat California Congressman Eric Swalwell wants service members to know if they've contracted the virus and for the DoD to deploy antibody testing.
This certainly should be a clarion call for all of us.
Esper says the military will continue to work through the chain of command to change long-standing military practices that might allow the virus to spread.
How do you get 6 feet distancing on a sub or even a carrier for that matter? So the challenge will always be implementation.
The Pentagon says as U.S. military fights the battle against the virus, it remains ready for whatever challenge it might face. Reporting in Washington, I'm Kelly Meyer.
It puts pressure on our healthcare system.
Louisiana Senator John Kennedy wants abortion clinics to close during the coronavirus crisis to free up personal protective equipment like masks, gowns, and gloves for doctors treating COVID-19 patients.
I'm very pro-life, but putting that aside, I don't see how anybody with a straight face can argue that at this point in time, an abortion clinic is an essential business. I just don't get it.
The Trump administration says any non-essential elective medical procedures should be postponed, but hasn't mentioned whether that includes abortions.
What I'm hoping will happen is that the governor will just declare them non-essential businesses and say shut down.
While Louisiana isn't banning abortions yet, other states have already seen their bans challenged in court. The ban in Texas has made it all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. The Center for Reproductive Rights, one of the groups representing the abortion providers, said in a statement, "This is an extraordinarily difficult time, but this is an easy case. Texas is blatantly abusing its emergency power to obliterate Roe v. Wade." This week, a federal judge temporarily blocked the ban in Alabama. Senator Doug Jones says during a pandemic, the focus should be on a holistic approach to health care for everyone.
The abortion rate is going to fall. Just like the infant mortality rate is going to fall, just like the maternal mortality rate is going to fall.
More court decisions on the bans could come down this week. In Washington, I'm Jessie Chenor.
They depend on being able to harvest their crops and take them to the markets, and there's no market to go to now.
As demand from restaurants and school cafeterias has dropped, West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin wants the U.S. Department of Agriculture to provide direct relief funding to farmers.
We want to either cap it at $100,000 per producer or 50% of the total lost revenue.
Manchin says many farmers can't rely on their banks because some are not taking part in the new coronavirus relief law.
Only a third are participating, and the rest of them are concerned because they don't want to be held liable if the loans are defaulted, and these are people they might not know, and they don't know how to handle that.
Manchin's office says these disruptions could lead to more than $1 billion in losses through the end of 2020. But West Virginia Senator Shelley Moore Capito says it's too early to say if farmers need more relief.
We did include farmers in those packages intentionally to try to help them be able to sustain themselves a little better during this economic downturn.
Capito says the existing coronavirus relief law should finance farmers' immediate necessities and needs time to work.
Payroll, rent, and mortgage and utilities, part of that 8 weeks there in a forgivable loan.
However, Manchin says farmers need more and wants the USDA to take quick action to protect those feeding the country. Reporting in Washington, I'm Basil John.
The death toll decreases. 600 to 800 people a day is still too high. It has to come down, way down, before me to feel safe to get back on a train or do anything. As of right now, I'm just coming out for essentials, food, little things that I need. But other than that, I'm staying home.
I would feel safe to go back to work within like 2 months or so. I think June would be the best month to go back. I know everyone in New York is so anxious to go back, but we have to take things slow. And the slower we take it, the more time we have to go back to work in a safe environment.
We have to keep going. We have to take a rest because we need to, keep my family eating. And we have to take a rest.
Because if they don't wear the proper respirator and they don't use it correctly or properly, they won't get protection against the virus. This disposable respirator might filter out 95% of the particles. This respirator will filter out 100% of the particles. Researchers have studied how well these work breathing in, and they might filter out 5 or 10% of the particles. And a homemade one of these, which is great people are doing to try to protect themselves, protect other people from them. If you make a homemade one of these out of a material like my shirt, which is just a single layer of a woven fabric, and you breathe in through that woven fabric, it might collect 1 or 2% of the viral particles. You would place the respirator over your mouth and nose, take the upper strap, put it over your ears, and take the lower strap and place it below your ears. So you have to be trained and be careful to get the best possible seal here, because you want the air to go through the respirator and not through the leakage path between the respirator and your face. Take the bottom strap off, top strap, and now your hand presumably is maybe infected. The outer side of the respirator may be contaminated. You should assume it is. So you should take this respirator, if you're going to use it again, place it in a bag or a container, a safe place.
We don't want to have your family be injured and end up going to the emergency room, especially now when the emergency rooms are overwhelmed with dealing with the coronavirus. It's important to realize the risks that are at home every day, but they're exacerbated and exaggerated now because so many people are in the house at the same time. And at the same time, people are preoccupied. If they're teleworking, they're focusing on that as well as childcare. A lot of times, for example, you have the new flat screen TV and you put the old TV in the children's room. So you send them off to watch TV. That's a problem because they're not being supervised and they can climb on the furniture. And that older TV is a heavier TV and it's more likely to tip over, and the weight of it can really crush a little child. Make sure that area, the crib or the bassinet, does not have a pillow or a blanket or stuffed animals in there. Bare is best. That's what you want to remember when it comes to the safest way for an infant to sleep. Bare is best. These little steps, they don't take much, whether it's just getting the Anchor-It kit or making sure you put the baby to rest the proper way, or to make sure the seniors have their medication locked up or the disinfectants are all put away. But those little steps can create a huge difference in the lives of you, your family, and your friends.
My name is Enric Martí. I'm originally born in Barcelona, Catalonia, and I started with the AP in 1994 during the siege of Sarajevo in Bosnia.
My name is Mei Wong, and I'm a photographer with the Associated Press. I joined the AP in 2003, and I'm from Singapore.
I've always moved around in a motorcycle in all the cities where I live because I've been driving my motorcycle for years, seeing pictures on the sides that I could obviously not take because I was driving.
When you put two photographers on a motorcycle, if you are in sync with each other and the way you see pictures around you, you can be surprised by the results. It has become second nature of me to shoot off a moving vehicle. I think it has got a little bit to do with my past 5 years being out of North Korea, where 80% of my photos are actually shot out of a vehicle window. And that's the only way for me to capture stolen moments.
Brooklyn and Manhattan, where is the place where we went the first day.
We saw a lot of people that were working on the streets. There were a lot of delivery men. You had people cleaning the streets and picking up trash. There were still a lot of homeless people that we saw around pushing carts and their belongings.
But you see, the situation is so tense and so difficult for everybody here. And this is something that is happening all over the world, you see, but we are here. We've been in situations of violence, of, a lot of unrest. But this is like you walk around with this fear of catching something that is there, things that you touch, whatever it is. You can tell that that is not only happening to us, but to everybody else that walks around.
When I was on the bike, we were going quite fast. I saw a figure on the side of the highway, and so of course I instinctively shot it.
The guy is sitting there, and the feeling you get when you see the picture is like the guy is about to jump. And he's really hunting because, I don't think he jumped, okay? But I don't really know.
It made me think of a lot of things. One was, we often go by our life very quickly, and you never really know what happens when you're just passing through. This, in a dark way, does represent a lot of how a lot of people feel right now. You're on the edge. It's either you push on and you continue to be strong, or you give up. And hopefully most of us choose to not give up. The most memorable part of a project is usually the journey to getting there, or the process. It's never really about the pictures. Pictures are just reminders and snippets of moments, because the whole project for me works together because it's a collection of these moments all over New York.
So my dad was hospitalized with coronavirus, was in the intensive care unit on a ventilator, and we had no contact with him for 6 days after he was admitted there. I just tried to say how many people were out here rooting for him, cheering for him. I told them, thank you for raising me, thank you for everything you've done, and look forward to making more memories after this.
Some people just want us to go and hold somebody's hand or say a prayer with them or, give them a message. Everybody has a different need and a different request at this time.
I do remember the first patient when we gave that sheet to the patient, and his response was, I feel safe already because I know I'm being treated by humans.
You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy, the sky is so gray.
Our hospital right now, we're not taking any visitors, so you're not really getting to see a lot of familiar faces or friendliness. This was kind of another way of me being a nurse.
The doctors are saying the statistics are basically he won't make it. And so, like, I feel like he's like that 1 in a million, that miracle. And I have to think that the communication played a role, because that's when he started turning around. Maybe we gave him that push that he needed to keep fighting.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleam, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streamed, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled